It had been 3 days since you last saw your partner. They had walked out into the forest to the nearby lake to go fishing. It was supposed to be just a short trip. The search parties had looked day and night, and the most they had ever come up with was a piece of torn fabric from the clothes your partner had been wearing. Someone in the search party claimed that they had heard their voice at one point, crying out the same words again and again. "Someone help me!" It was on the second day of searching when things got bad. The search party spread out into the forest, and not everyone returned. 2 more people were missing now. The sheriff called off the search after that, claimed that something else was going on, that they needed to call in backup from the nearby town. That would be at least a day's wait, and wasted time. You couldn't wait, not knowing that your partner was still out there and someone had just heard them a day before. Every minute counted, and you had to find them. You headed back in on your own, desperate to find the one person you loved more than anything. Shortly into your journey in the forest, a voice called out, "Someone help me!" It was them. There's no doubt. It was their voice. You call out for them, only getting the exact same response. "Someone help me!" You begin rushing towards the sound that continues to echo. "Someone help me!" You're tripping over roots and stones as you scramble through the forest, desperately getting closer and closer to the voice until it's right upon you. You barrel around a tree of a trunk, expecting to find your partner curled up, but instead you see 2 large boulders with a small gap between them. The space is tight, barely large enough for a child to fit into, let alone a grown adult. And then you hear a sickening crunching sound. A pale, clawed hand stretches out from the space between the stone. Bones creak and stretch as a tall, pale figure's body twists and contorts as it pulls itself out from the space that should have been way too small for it. Its neck is long and disjointed like the rest of its form, and it breaks and twists, rising up above you, its limp arms dangling and dragging along the ground. Dislocated bones beneath its pale flesh can be seen pressing against its rubbery skin. Its mouth cracks open, jaw popping as it opens wider than humanly possible, and as it lunges at you, words escape from its deformed mouth. "Someone help me!" Days from now, when people would come looking for you, your own voice would drag others to a similar demise, but your body would never be found. Hi, I'm Ryan, lead designer of Ethereal here at Fineground Cryptids, and consider this your first introduction to the horrific creature of our own design, the Contortionist. This is an original cryptid that we designed just for Ethereal, and today we're going to talk about its design and the horrors behind it. Let's dive in. Before we dive into today's video, I just want to give you a friendly reminder that our quick guide is actually coming next month. So if the creature in this video interests you and you want to fight things similar to it, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you can get updates on when the quick guide is available and how to get access to it. Okay, so the Contortionist. As with everything drawn in Ethereal, this was drawn by my very talented wife, and she really nailed the creepy, horrific vibes of this twisted, contorting creature that seems like it could fit into any space and grab you at any time. As the name suggests, these creatures are all about contorting their form, shifting bones and muscle to allow themselves to fit into tight, inconspicuous spaces. They then wait patiently for their prey. They are fast, lanky, and hard to stop once they decide that you're their target. Worst off, they have the ability to mimic your last words, using those final precious moments of your life to bring in more people and lead them right to it to continue feasting and feeding. They're the ultimate hunters, being able to hide in inconspicuous spaces, call in prey, and be able to move fast and deadly and quickly. For this creature, we really want to design something that felt like it was taken right from a horror movie. Something that could feel like it was preying on camp counselors, or taking on someone that's car is broken down and they're stuck on the side of the road. We want to have a very uncanny valley feel to it. It has this weird humanoid form to it, but nothing about this creature is quite right. From the grin that it has, or the twisted form, or the joints that are clearly out of place. So as I said, we really took inspiration from horror movies and making it feel like it was a monster from one of those movies. So how did we do that from a stat block perspective? Now, first off, we really kind of grabbed onto that. It was like that jaw it has and how it's able to dislocate its mouth. So we gave it a bite attack. Now, that sounds boring at first, but trust me, this thing is not just any regular bite attack. If it succeeds on that bite attack and you're already weakened and you have no defenses, it sinks its teeth in, grabbing you and keeping you close. And that's when it begins to feed. This feed ability lets it drink its blood from its foes and even pull out muscle and tissue. And as it does, it heals itself. Now, to really play into that horror aspect, we made it so that if this feed attack knocks you unconscious, it's one of the few entities that actually just outright kills you. to give that feeling of like in a horror movie when a creature just kind of comes out of nowhere and just quickly knocks off its prey, taking off their head or just quickly ripping out their jugular. So obviously based on the creature's design, we needed to make sure that it felt nimble and quick. So obviously, tip of the iceberg, we gave it very solid movement speed compared to other entities. But on top of that, we wanted to make it feel like it's very agile because of its lanky form. So it first of all has advantage on any dexterity saving throws, quickly weaving in and out to dodge abilities. It's not able to be grappled, so if you try to grab this thing, it kind of just breaks free. But that's actually just kind of the tip of what is really horrific about this creature's speed. Their first ability is called Broken Sprint. This lets them move and then make a bite attack. This lets them dash around the battlefield, grabbing an entity as they go, and if not, moving a little bit further. Then we have Dislocated Jaunt, probably one of my favorite abilities on this creature. This is where the entity's trickery and flexible body comes into play. It has this reaction that when a ranged attack would normally hit it, it can move and change the target of that ranged attack or ability to another target. This is to capture that element of horror movies when a creature's quickly moving across a cave or through a forest and somebody's trying to shoot it, but then their fire they can't quite line up that shot and they accidentally graze one of their allies, catching them in the crossfire. Now, there's one piece of information that I withheld when I was talking about the Contortionist movement before, and it's a very simple detail, but when you realize what it implies, it's quite horrific. So normally when you're grappling something else in Ethereal, your movement is halved, but not for the Contortionist. It gets its full speed. Now, what does that mean? You know in those horror movies when you see somebody get grabbed and dragged off into the darkness? That's the element we want to have in play here. All those movement abilities that I mentioned, when the Contortionist has you grabbed by its jaw, it can use those abilities. So it can now drag you away from your allies, pulling you further off to try feeding on you. Or even better, it can move into position, grab someone, and then continue to move. And your allies have no choice but to watch as they see their friend getting pulled away from the field, and then they need to try figuring out how they're going to catch up. Believe it or not, the horrors don't stop there. The Contortionist doesn't have a telegraphed attack, so in true Ethereal fashion, when a creature doesn't have one of those, they instead get alternate stat block, almost a what if, what did this creature look differently? For the Contortionist, we asked ourselves, well, what if a Contortionist fed so much and kept eating and it was just constantly hungry? Well, we get the glutted Contortionist. It's a Contortionist that's eaten so much that its stomach is ruptured and its entrails hang out from it. It's no longer that swift creature that it was before, but it gets a whole spew of other horrific abilities. This can act as a great entity on its own, or it can act as a follow-up encounter. Possibly your players have fought the base Contortionist, and then you come in with the glutted Contortionist later, being a form of it, returning, being in a very different state, damaged. It might not be as fast and nimble as before, but oh, is this thing still deadly? Its jaw is dislocated from overeating, so its bite no longer holds you in place, but instead it leaves behind this nasty infection and does even more damage than the base Contortionist's bite, and could possibly even poison you if you're so unlucky. Unlike its glory days, this creature even has a ranged attack where it spits up acidic bile, which can eat through and ignore armor. Finally, and disgustingly, it can release its innards in this heavy spew forward. It causes an AoE of acid damage, which, once again, ignores armor and does a massive amount of damage if you're caught in it. The Glutted Contortionist actually took a lot of inspiration from creatures like the Spitter and the Boomer from Left 4 Dead. We wanted to take this thing that kind of takes your expectations of the Contortionist and changes it. It's no longer a nimble creature moving around the battlefield, grabbing your allies. It's a completely different horror now that just stands in place and takes damage and happily does so as you suffer poison damage for being near it, or as it shoots bile across the map. And most importantly, it doesn't care about your defenses. This thing can just use its acid to eat through any armor you think you have. The Contortionist, from a design perspective, is probably one of my favorites that we have. It was one of the first entities that we came up with, and I think it really is just a movie monster on a page. It's fast and deadly. One of them can disrupt a party, but a lot of them could do some very serious damage. They skirt in and out of combat, trying to drag allies away. They break up the aspect of what players are used to, is where they normally feel safe sitting on the outskirts of combat. Well, not so much anymore. In fact, you probably don't want to be on those outskirts in case they pull you even further away. They're terrifying to fight and super fun to run as a GM. You can place them almost anywhere. Forests, caves, maybe in an abandoned factory, or maybe even one snuck into a zoo. Where do you think the worst spot to run into a Contortionist would be? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.